My name is Todd Mayo, and I am the creator and producer of Ear to the Common Ground. The story behind the inception of it is rooted in a couple of things. One is very positive, and one is very negative. The positive is I am very fortunate to call this place where I live home. And I sort of discovered this place back in 2015. I was looking for a home for my two children, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I see in a place called Madison, that's just a little north of the city, this 1920s stone farmhouse on 13 acres with a creek and a barn for sale for less than the price of a tall, skinny house over in Inglewood, which is a neighborhood not far. And I said, wow, I need to go there. And I called the lady up who was the owner and the real estate agent. And I said, ma'am, can I come out there right now? And she said, no. And this was on a Friday. And I said, well, can I come out there? When can I come? And she said, tomorrow. So the next day, I drive down these old rusted out gates and this gravel road, and there's an old barn, horse barn, and there's this stacked stone farmhouse in the distance, and it's like I entered into them. It's in the middle of the city, in the middle of Nashville. Never heard of it. And I pull in, and there's an RV sitting right there. And on that RV is two bumper stickers. One is Music City Roots, which is a music program that I co-created back that ran for 8 or 9 years there. And the other was Bluegrass Underground, which is a show that I produced on PBS from a magic cave, and still do. We call it the Cavern Sessions now. And it was like, all right, somebody trying to tell me something up there. And I went and knocked on the door, and a guy answered. We had never met. But I knew who he was. He was the head of production at the Opry and the Ryman, and his name is John Mayer. And I walked into the house, and at the time, we were in production, pre-production, for a wonderful program that aired. It was the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band's 50th year anniversary. And we did that back about 2017, and from the Ryman Auditorium. And the first thing that I see is a nitty-gritty dirt band, Mother Maybelle Carter, Will the Circle Be Unbroken, hatch print. And I got chills up my arm there. And I said to the guy, I said, man, I think I'm supposed to live here. And he said, well, make me an offer. I said, well, I'll give you what you want for it, minus 3%, because I'll represent myself. And so that was it. And then we walked into this room where we are right now, which I found out later was called the music room. And he started telling me about the musical history of this place. And it's a vast musical history. 6 different country music Hall of Famers have lived here. The first one was a man named Jim Denny. And Jim is notorious, sort of infamous in the old days of Music City. He was the head of the Grand Ole Opry and of WSM, and said one time to a young pre-famous Elvis Presley, when he played the Opry for the first time, he said, boy, don't go quitting your day job. And Elvis was properly pissed at that and went and joined the Louisiana Hayride, and the rest is history. Of course, they recognized Elvis's talents in other places, notably Memphis and Sun Studio and all that. But so Jim owned the house, and he sold the home for $15 to a man named Carl Smith. And Carl is known as Mr. Country. And Carl was a famous music star back in the 50s, and he sold it to him right before he married June Carter. So June Carter lived here with Carl Smith. That marriage produced a child, Carlene Carter, who lived here, but it ended in divorce. But that's okay. Sometimes those things happen and work out for everybody, and it worked out for Carl because he obviously married Goldie, and for June because she met Johnny Cash. So this home is on Cash Lane, and this is where Johnny and June courted, and where Johnny used to come, and where June wrote "Ring of Fire" with Merle Kilgore. So it's just a super history of music and country music. That's only the half of it. After June and Johnny got married, they moved up to Hendersonville, and she moved in her mother Maybelle Carter. And so Mother Maybelle, who was present at the birth of country music at the Big Bang in Bristol, Tennessee, she lived here for about 8 or 9 years and passed away in her sleep in the bedroom over there. And after that, Carlene lived here, and Cindy Cash was married to Marty Stewart, and they lived here. I skipped one of the Country Music Hall of Famers, I guess, when June, before she married Johnny, and after she was divorced from Carl, she went up to New York City and studied acting at the Strasberg Institute. And one of her friends said, June, you mind if I come over there and stay at your place? It's a nice little pastoral setting. And she said, that'd be fine. Well, that was her friend Patsy. And so that'd be Patsy Cline. So if you take Jim Denny and Carl Smith and June Carter and Maybelle Carter and Patsy Cline and Marty Stewart, that's 6 Country Music Hall of Famers. So this place has kind of got some history and got some spirit. And it's a wonderful place. I don't necessarily think about that very much in the history of it. I'm raising kids here and dogs and work and doing things. But I'd always wondered and always, why did that happen? It's just, I'm not really a big believer in coincidence. And I think maybe, you take a word like synchronicity or happenstance or providence, those are good words. But I think they all kind of mean the same thing. In other words, some things feel meant to be. And I felt like it was meant to be that I found this place, especially in the way that I did and the literal sign. So that's the positive thing that led to the Ear to the Common Ground. So I have this wonderful place. I have this wonderful space. I have a deep and abiding belief in the power of music to bring people together. And that is something I own and produce concerts and shows from the Caverns, which is an underground, literally a music venue inside of a cave, and done shows on PBS for about 10 or 11 years. And when you go to the Caverns, there's a giant wooden door, magic door. My buddy Rob Morrow made them. And there's a famous Indian named Sequoia, who was a Cherokee Indian. The only person that I know of that invented an entire alphabet by themselves. Most of those kind of things evolve over, generations. But his people couldn't read or write, and by God, he invented an alphabet. And so we wanted to honor that with a saying that is very important to me, and it's part of what I believe. And what it says in Sequoian script, when you come to the Caverns, is welcome to the Caverns, where the Great Spirit brings all people together through music. And so take this guy, Todd Mayo is my name, living in this historic house, got a music show and venue in a cave, believes in the power of music to bring people together. And those are all fundamentally, obviously positive things. But the negative thing that led to the inception and the idea for doing this was just about the worst emotion a body can feel, and that's contempt. And contempt, I don't know what the definition in Webster's is, but to me it's like looking down on somebody with anger. It's feeling anger. It's feeling belittling. It's ugly. And it's they say a contempt will ruin a marriage, and it'll ruin any relationship. If you're feeling contempt for anybody, it's just as negative as it can get. And I was feeling a lot of contempt in my heart, in my soul, in my spirit, and being warped by it for good people that I knew and know and loved, that happened to have voted differently than I did. And I was a little bit ate up with that, and I think that there can be politicians that are worthy of contempt. I think choices that people can make can maybe be contemptuous type things, but I don't believe in contempt for human beings, generally speaking, and particularly ones that you know and you love. That's ugly. And so I kind of had that in my spirit. So I was at a concert. I believe it was a Widespread Panic concert back in Ascend Amphitheater in Nashville, 2017 or so, around about then. And, I'm looking around at all the crowd, and they're kind of a band that maybe half of the fans of that group are, maybe kind of Southern, white, frat boy kind of guy, maybe politically on the right side of the equation. But maybe half of that audience is also sort of that hippie chick, Birkenstock wearing, maybe on the left of the thing. And it just kind of occurred to me that, man, if everybody in this audience had a T on their forehead for who they voted for, it was back 2017, or an H for who they voted for, half these people might not even look at the other half, much less talk to them. But yet everybody's here, they are dancing and having a good time. And that is fundamentally the power of music. Music does bring people together. Politics, race, religion, unfortunately, so many times are divisive. And so I had an idea that night. Whatever it was, 2 beer buzz out at a concert, dealing with contempt, having a good time, had this thought. And I said, well, I know what I'm going to do. It all came very clear to me in that moment. And so the next day I wrote it down. I said, I'm going to do a show called Ear to the Common Ground. And I'm going to do it in Music City on Cash Lane, where, Music City itself is sort of a progressive or liberal island in the middle of a conservative rural state. Tennessee's pretty right side of the equation. Nashville's pretty left side of the equation. But then there's also, in the middle of this urban city, this rural oasis. So it kind of had all these different metaphors working. And there's this old barn, and I said, I'm gonna get an artist, one artist, and 8 of their fans, and we're gonna take one issue. And there's only gonna be 2 rules. Don't mention any living politician, because we ain't getting into that. It's about issues, not politics. And try your best to replace contempt with the antidote to contempt, which of course is compassion. And that's the idea. And let's talk about these things face to face. And let's make sure that the fans are diverse, ethnically diverse, religiously diverse, diversity in sexual orientation, in gender, and in geography. But most importantly, let's make sure that they're diverse in their thought. And so if we take an issue and we've got these fans, 8 of them, they all have commonality because they're all fans of the artist to begin with. So that's the power of music to bring people together. But a third of them on that particular issue are on the left, a third are on the right, and a third are in the middle. And let's have everybody bring a dish and talk about it, so that the spirit of the show is, you might say, Johnny, I don't really agree with what you just said right there, but please pass that macaroni salad you made. It's freaking delicious. And it's like, that's the thing. Food, music, not talking on a screen, eyeball to eyeball. Let's have a conversation. Let's quit having contempt for people that are good people just because they think differently than you about one issue. And so, and that was the genesis of the show, of the idea. And so that was 2017. I didn't do nothing with it. I put it in a drawer. I had a bunch of other projects going. We had a show we were doing in Cuba, and I had a new cave we were doing, and that led to 2018. And then 2019, another project come up, and it was in that file of, well, that'd be a good idea. And as time was going on and I was neglecting trying to do something about this idea I had and wrote down on a piece of paper several years ago, the actual contempt and the polarization in politics was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And inflationary, in many ways. And so in 2020, when time sort of stopped, during the pandemic, I said, I've got to do this, or at least try to do that. And so I called up a bunch of wonderful friends to come and join me, and that were diverse, and talk about issues, and a bunch of wonderful production friends, because I'm in that business. And, I'm in Tennessee. I was born in Memphis. I went to UT in the east and live in Nashville in the middle. It's known as the volunteer state, but so many great Tennesseans have volunteered for war. That's why they call them, they stand up when there's trouble, which is noble and admirable. It makes me proud. But I think about all these great Tennesseans that were volunteering on this project initially, and as it's gone on, that volunteered for peace and for civility and for maybe trying to unwind a lot of this rhetoric and polarization and contempt. And so we all got together right in the middle of the worst of the COVIDs, got our tests and had our masks, and we sat around at a couple tables, and my buddy Scott Miller, who's a wonderful musician, came and played. And by God, it felt revolutionary. We weren't doing nothing more than having a, quote, dinner party with some music and some good food and talking about things. But at that time, it just to not have a mask on and just to be like a human being having conversations and not behind the phone. And, this is the summer, the fall of 2020. Gosh knows the country was going through so much, the world was. So we did this pilot in 2020. Nothing really came of it, but I did it. We did it. And it was just kind of like, all right, I'd love to see a TV show out of this, but, it just didn't come together. Simple as that. Now, if I wanted to do a TV show, that was made money and took this sort of genesis of an idea, but actually leaned on the contempt side as opposed to the compassion, well, I'd have a show on Bravo. And it would be, crazy Uncle Charlie and batty Aunt Betty, and we'd ply them with alcohol, and we'd cast people who were unstable, and we'd film the fireworks. Now that gets ratings. And we all know that. We all know what gets ratings, not just to pick on Bravo, but everywhere. It's conflict is what the gain is on those kind of things. But we're the opposite of that. But that doesn't necessarily, get you a network audience. But it brings me back and circles back around, of course, to public television. And I've produced programs, and I've produced a music series with my partner Todd Mayo on public television, the Cavern Sessions. But public television and PBS is the home in America for content like this. And so Becky Magura is a wonderful friend, but also she's the head of Nashville Public Television, NPT. And we pitched the idea of doing a show like this to her and NPT presenting it, and she was all about it. And, we needed to find funding and money to do it. And so that's how things go from a pilot to actually getting done. The problem was we didn't have any money, and I didn't want to let that stop us from doing this series. And so in 2021, in the spring, some things started to happen. A good friend of mine named Becca Finley, she is a compassionate spirit and loved the idea of doing this and wanted to help. And so she knew a guy named Sean who is with a company called Go-To Team. And they're a television production company that has cameras and lights and shooters and all those things. And they said, look, we like the idea of this. We get it. We're going to donate it. Like, this is a great idea. This should be on television. We're going to donate all of that equipment. And I found other people, production people, friends of friends that came in. Again, Tennessee volunteers and volunteers from all over. And so Becca, we went and cast 12 artists and found 12 artists, and all wonderful artists. And they're all musically diverse and all wonderful artists in their own right. And we had the artists reach out to their fans. And we had hundreds of people want to be a part of this, to volunteer, to come and do this. And so Becca went and interviewed them all and did face-to-face interviews, phone interviews, Zoom interviews. And what we tried to do was have an episode with an artist, with an issue, with a diverse array of fans. Again, not only geographic diversity. We had city mice and urban mice and suburban mice. And we had, black and brown and Asian, white folks and gays and bisexuals and non-binary. We had trans folks, trans artists, Christians and Jews and agnostics and everything. And again, most importantly, we had people on those issues that represented the full spectrum or a decent spectrum of thoughts. And we didn't direct anybody per se. We didn't cast anybody per se. We talked to the people, and we wanted to make sure that they had different, we wanted to make sure there was some diversity of opinion. But at the end of the day, we brought them in, sat them down at the table, let them talk, let them go, had the musician come out at the end, bring some dessert, play some songs, and do nothing, just as simple as a show to bring people together and to show people on public television or online, YouTube or wherever, other folks that are just like them that are leading with compassion. And I don't think that you can be closer to whatever the Spirit is in this world that is holy, which I believe is there, than you can when you're listening with compassion. And, that Spirit was evident. So once you decide to do something, you kind of throw your hat over the wall, so to speak, and then you gotta kind of go chase it and go get it. There's a lot of logistics and a lot of things to do. On the very first morning of the very first taping, we had the great artist, Native American artist Bill Miller, Grammy winner, wonderful. And the issue was separation of church and state. And it was, taping day one. We taped these episodes. We did 12, so we taped them over 13 straight days. I remember we took Easter Sunday off, but it was kind of a grind there. And the very first day, it was the most terrific rainstorm all night long, raining all morning. And I got up, and the call wasn't till 10 o'clock, but I was up there at 6, 7 in the morning, and I went out and got a Home Depot, got a shop vac. And it was pathetic because I've got this shop vac and I'm sitting there trying to suck up the water. And I'm like, oh, it's good. But it wasn't that. It was groundwater. It just kept rising. So as fast as I suck it up, there it comes right back up again. I said, I'm just going to have to let this. And there was channels of rivers running through. And we had because we'd set up the day before, we had cables and everything. I said, oh, this is, this old barn, there's holes in it. It's pouring down rain. The groundwater table's up. This is all just terrible. I'm just, oh my God. So I'm driving out to go Home Depot where I was getting something else, like a squeegee. I don't know. Stressed out already. Here's the day just started. I'm stressed out. And so I'm driving home. It's just a 5-minute drive. And I put it on a Bill Miller song. And I remember it was called Wind Spirit. And I said, well, let me let the music kind of calm me down or whatever. And driving in my driveway. And there's a little creek, Gibson Creek, that runs right over there, parallel to Cash Lane in Music City. It's all just metaphoric to me. I don't know, literal too. So, and I had seen once before in my life, a couple times, a blue heron out there picking up crayfish out of the thing, but I had never seen what I saw listening to Wind Spirit of Bill Miller as I was turning around. There was not one, not two, but 3 snow white. I looked it up. I guess you call them great American egrets. They were white herons, and there was 3 of them, and they just flew off, right as I come around. And it was just like, I believe in stuff like that, I just felt, wow, that gave me a wonderful sense of calm. That I'm where I'm supposed to be. We're all doing what we're supposed to be doing. And yeah, there's a river running right through this barn right now. We're going to be taping over here in a few hours. But you know what? It set a great tone. And the thing that was so wonderful about the actual production itself of doing this, it was a great idea, and it took a long time to have it happen, and a lot of good people to come together and volunteer to make it happen. But the thing that got magical about it, spiritual, and just made you proud to be an American. We had people coming from all over the country on their own dime, paying their way to come here. The artists, nobody got paid a nickel. They came, they brought their desserts, they made their desserts. We sat there and night after night, abortion, immigration, LGBTQ, education, on and on and on. We took these issues and people spoke about it compassionately and with humor and with grace. And that's America. That is America. There are extremes on both sides that monetize fear. And fear is so easy to monetize. And I don't blame people for doing it because they're money motivated. They can tap into our fear. They can do that. They do that. But it's up to us to have the compassion and to not be monetized by that. And it was just so hopeful and great to see what I think we all believe is the real America. The real America is definitely filled with people on the extremes. There's no doubt about that. But that's not the majority. That's the minority. And it's made to feel like it's the majority because people are monetizing the situation. Okay, whatever. But the facts are, and the belief that I have and everybody that I think was associated was what we were really doing was showing things as they used to be. You know, you could know somebody for 10 years, break bread with them, be friends with them, know their children, know all about them, never talk politics with them one time. Those days have been over for a while. And so, you know, that's the spirit of it. And that was, it was profound. One of the things that I learned from Ear to the Common Ground that was enlightening to me was it's easy as a human being, I'm certainly guilty of it, of stereotyping people based on a lot of different things. You know, where they look, the way they talk, where they're from, instant 5-minute or 5-second blink on meeting them or whatever, sizing people up on what they think and these things. I love the fact that this show highlighted, I almost said that it was subversive, but it's not subversive. It's the reality. It's not shown. But, you know, I'll use a couple examples what I'm trying to get to. You know, we had some guys on this show on gun control, I can remember, and gun rights. You know, good old boy, he's got his overalls on. He's got long mutton chop. You know, you just know what this guy thinks and feels about that just by him walking right in the sitting down at the table, you know. And of course, he wasn't that way. He had very liberal beliefs about that. And, you know, there was a guy, a Mexican-American who was a DACA recipient and a dreamer. And you just meet him and you look at him and you hear his story and you know what he feels about this country. Why, he couldn't have been more conservative about immigration and different things. And so you realize that there's a spectrum, a beautiful, wonderful spectrum of thought, and thought based on experience and nuance and a life lived. And you got to listen to people. Don't assume. You know, if there's a wonderful spectrum of the color of your skin, which there is, or your sexuality, or your religious beliefs, or lack thereof, those, the identities that people have are all wonderful. If you choose to see yourself, or, you know, we all have multiple identities, but if you want to lead with the color of your skin, or your sexual orientation, or your gender, or where you're from, or what your belief in God is, or whatever, cool. That's awesome and to be respected. But the fact is, everybody fundamentally identifies with being a human being. And there is no self. It's not me and you. It's us. And that spirit was prevalent in that barn, on Cash Lane, in Music City. And so that's really all we set out to do at the end of the day. It was enlightening to see it done. And I learned a lot just by listening, and listening with compassion. And it was wonderful.